tonight is the third church in Revelation. It's at the end of chapter 2. And I'm going to ask somebody if they would to read it for us. It's the church at Pergamum. Sure.
In chapter 1.
Chapter 2. At the end of chapter 2, it says, to the church at Pergamum.
And to the angel of the church in Pergamum write, these are the words of him who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know where you are living, where Satan's throne is, yet you were holding fast to my name, and you did not deny your faith in me, even in your days of and to this. My witness, my faithful one who was killed among you, where Satan lives. But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold to the teachings of Balaam. Before the people of Israel, who taught Balaam to put a stumbling block before the people of Israel, so that they would eat food sacrificed to idols and practice fornication. So you also have some who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Repent then. If not, I will come to you soon and make war against them with the sword of my mouth. Let anyone who has an ear to listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To everyone who conquers, I will give some of the manna, and I will give a white stone. And on the white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it.
That's it. And everybody said, Amen. So we can go home now. Thank you very much. All right. You understood all of that, right? Do what? Double-edged sword coming out of the mouth. We're going to talk about that. What that means. We talked about the double-edged sword. About it coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, no.
Okay. Well, we can go back and look. How about that? Okay. Pergamum, if you'll hit the screen, sir, so we can see where it is on the map. There we go. Ephesians is number 1. We looked at that 2 weeks ago. And then last week we looked at Smyrna. And this week we're looking at Pergamum. And as you can tell, Pergamum this time is not on the coast. In fact, all the rest of the churches will not be on the coast either, just the first 2. Pergamum was the capital of the Roman province in Asia. That's important. It was the capital of the Roman province in Asia. It was 45 miles north of Smyrna, and it was on a high rock outcropping. It had a natural fortress. Hit the next one, sir. You can see on the bottom one, that whole kind of, little mountain up there. That particular one at the bottom, though, was where they had the Zeus's temple. That's what the top one is. That's actually in Germany right now. But that's where it sat, on a hill like that. All of the town was built on hills so that there were fortifications. Why?
So on the bottom picture, there's something back in the town.
That's the town in the background.
So they moved the temple from Asia to.
Well, this is several thousands of years ago, and it was kind of falling apart. And probably Hitler came and took all of it and reassembled it in Germany. That's my guess. Am I close?
No, it was Schliemann, but Hitler was, he really liked it, so he built one for himself similar to it in Berlin.
Is that full size or is that a
Nuremberg.
model?
Is that what?
Full size or is that a model?
That is it.
That's it.
That's the actual one.
In the trees there is where the foundation was, and the city of Pergamum would be to the rear of those trees. The city you see there is Pergamum, which was built in the valley. Pergamum, Turkey.
So that gives you an idea of the whole reason why they built on these rock outcroppings was because they could defend it a whole lot easier. Since it was the capital of the Roman province in Asia, there were a lot of reasons to make sure that it was fortified very well. So that's the reason why they built it up there. In Pergamum, they had a saying that had to do with the law. And it said that the governor the authority of the governor comes from this saying: it's the right of the sword. The authority of the governor comes from the fact that he's got the most power, that he's got the army behind him, the right of the sword. And so all of the people understand that if they were to come against the governor, they come against the whole army, the right of the sword. Now, keep that in mind in terms of what Jesus said at the beginning. What did he say? How did he describe himself? As the two-edged sword coming out of his mouth. That's proclamation of the governor to say this is law. Jesus goes one step farther and says, when I speak, it will not be a sword, it will be a double-edged sword. And it will be the final authority. That's what Jesus was talking about when he described himself the way that he did. Balaam, idolatry. Well, let's get into that. If you'll hit the next one, sir. This is the description of Jesus. Sharp two-edged sword coming out of his mouth. Hit his face bar again. All right. Here's what Jesus said to them. He praised them because they were holding fast to Jesus and not denying their faith in the midst of these people that were part of the church, that were saying, you know, it's okay if we bring in other gods and goddesses and do idolatry. God said, I am the one and only God. So to bring in other gods and to start becoming an idolater was totally against what God said. But there's a group of them that's holding fast to the one God. Also, we talked about the Nicolaitans. They were mentioned, and that's a group of people that were all about sexual immorality. And they brought that into the church, saying to the church, I don't know how they said it, but it might be something like this. God was the one that created our bodies. God created our bodies for pleasure, so let's have pleasure. Doesn't that sound like the world? The Nicolaitans built that into their worship of God, which is why God was highly displeased. But God is saying to the remnant of his people that are still there in the church that he praises them for holding fast to him and not denying their faith. If you'll hit the next one then. Here's the concern that he was talking about. The concern that there were some who have gotten into idolatry. That's what Balaam is all about. Some who have gotten into sexual immorality. That's what the Nicolaitans were all about. You know, in the Bible, there's a word in the Greek called agape. It's a word for love. And agape is when the Holy Spirit leads us to do something for somebody else. The Holy Spirit never leads us to do something for ourselves. The Holy Spirit in agape is always giving through us to others. But there's another word in the Greek for love, and that's the word eros. Any of you that have ever studied Greek mythology, Eros was one of the gods. And what did he look like? Any of y'all? Have any of y'all studied him? Yeah. What did Eros look like? Had these little wings behind him, and he was, fluttering around, and he had a bow and arrow in his hand. And like Cupid, it's just a different set of gods. It's the same kind of thought. And so eros was when our flesh overwhelmed us with compulsion. When we were compelled to do something physically that was not what God would have us to do. We gave in to the passion of the flesh. That's eros.